President Trump's first solo news conference at the White House was an unprecedented display of accusations and exaggerations. He said nearly everything Americans have heard about his first 4 weeks in office is wrong. He defended his actions, blasted his critics, and denied reports of a White House in chaos during what you could call a pretty freewheeling press conference that was all about trying to take back the narrative.
The president's outburst of frustration left many observers bewildered. His news conference lasted 77 minutes. He took at least 40 questions from 17 different reporters.
The president gave few details on policies, but he did promise a new order on immigration, and he gave timelines for overhauling Obamacare and the federal tax code. Margaret Brennan is at the White House. Margaret, good morning.
Good morning. After a tough week of news about the challenges facing his White House, President Trump decided he'd personally take control of the news cycle with this press conference. And this morning, he's already tweeted that Rush Limbaugh told him it was one of his greatest.
Tomorrow they will say, Donald Trump rants and raves at the press. I'm not ranting and raving.
It felt like a throwback to the campaign.
That's how I won. I won with news conference and probably speeches. I certainly didn't win by people listening to you people, that's for sure.
Now playing out in the East Room of the White House.
I turn on the TV, open the newspapers, and I see stories of chaos. Chaos.
President Trump flatly denied the notion that he's running a disorganized and ineffective White House.
It is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine.
He pinned the blame for the negative reviews on his favorite target.
You're dishonest people. The press, honestly, is out of control. The press has become so dishonest.
Mr. Trump insisted he'd done more in less time than any president in history, and said next week he'd unveil a new executive order on immigration to replace the travel ban blocked by the courts.
We had a very smooth rollout of the travel ban, but we had a bad court. Got a bad decision.
But the rollout resulted in confusion at airports across the country, due in part to a lack of coordination with government agencies.
I inherited a mess. It's a mess. At home and abroad, a mess.
The president blamed challenges on the situation he walked into. While unemployment is under 5% and the stock market soaring, Mr. Trump argues that health care is failing and the U.S. is in decline. President Obama often pointed out he'd inherited a global financial crisis and 2 bloody wars from his predecessor.
The tone is such hatred. I'm really not a bad person.
President Trump believes criticism of him is unfair and claimed any contact between his campaign and Russian intelligence officials was made up.
It's all fake news. It's all fake news.
Mr. Trump was pressed on whether he or any of his aides spoke to Russian officials.
No, nobody that I know of.
And insisted that if they did, he wasn't involved.
I have nothing to do with Russia. I told you, I have no deals there. I have no anything.
Asked about recent Russian provocations, including sailing a ship 30 miles off the coast of the U.S. and Russian jets buzzing a U.S. destroyer in the Black Sea, President Trump gave no indication as to how he might respond.
Can we conclude there'll be no response to these particular provocations?
I'm not going to tell you anything about what response I do. I don't talk about military response.
Now, President Trump did reveal that the White House is finalizing its plans to replace Obamacare and will submit it to Congress by March. Tax reform is up next. And Gail, the president will hold a campaign-style rally this Saturday in Florida.
All right. Thank you very much, Margaret.